Welcome back to today's video. In today's video, we're looking at a Trump versus Biden versus RFK election prediction for 2024. Now, as we begin today's video, guys, do me a quick favor and hit that subscribe button down below. In the last 28 days, only 2.2% of those of you who watch this channel are actually subscribed. Do me a quick favor and hit that subscribe button down below. It really helps out with the algorithm. Taking a look here at our electoral map here, we have both Trump and Biden here as the presumptive nominees, I believe, for their respective parties here. Taking a look at some national polls in the Republican primary, we see that Donald Trump is at 59.1% of the vote within the Republican primary. But taking a look here at some individual states, as we're looking at some individual states, the first state that there will actually be an election in the state of Iowa, we see that Donald Trump's lead is actually a little bit less. He's actually 15 points behind of where he is in the national average in the state of Iowa. Although that being said, he is still ahead. Ron DeSantis, who is his nearest competitor and rival, is at 18%. Nikki Haley, who is the former UN ambassador of the United States, is at 14.2%. Vivek Ramaswamy at 4.8%, followed by Chris Christie at 3.7%, and all the other candidates below 3%. Tim Scott and Mike Pence, Francisco Suarez, and Hurd have already dropped out of the race. So I am pretty sure at this point that Donald Trump will win in his race there for the Republican primary. Taking a look here at some polls with regards to President Biden and seeing where he is in. We see that President Biden here has a commanding lead in his primary as well. Right now, he is polling at 69.3%, almost 70%. In fact, he was at around 71% for quite a while there. You had RFK in the race for a while. He was registering at around 10% in support, although he did end up dropping out and forming an independent bid for the White House in 2024, which is why we're going to take a look at how his independent bid affects the White House race in 2024 and whether or not he will be able to pull more votes from Trump or Biden and what it actually tells us with regards to the general election. Although he is currently being primaried by two candidates, Marianne Williamson and Phillips. Phillips is a much more moderate on the Democratic side, whereas Marianne Williamson is a much more liberal individual, although they do not seem to be registering as much support. Both of them combined seem to be registering around 12.9% support. You have Kennedy, who obviously dropped out and formed an independent bid, and I believe that President Biden will obviously take his respective party's nomination. But taking a look here at our electoral map, because there's a lot of things that we have to look at when we're looking at 2024, and that is the fact that the electoral map actually changed quite a bit in 2024, in 2020 rather, in the 2020 census, and then that will affect the 2024 election, in that certain states gained and lost electoral votes. Taking a look here at our 2020 map, we see that states such as New York, states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, states like Florida, Montana, California, New York, Oregon, Colorado, Texas, Ohio, West Virginia, Illinois, a lot of these states gained or lost electoral votes. Taking a look here at the state of Pennsylvania, in 2020, the state of Pennsylvania had 20 electoral votes. Though because of redistricting in the census which took place in 2020, Pennsylvania now has only 19 electoral votes. Taking a look here at the state like California, California had 55 electoral votes, whereas in 2024, it has 54 electoral votes. Florida had 30 electoral votes. Now it only has 29 electoral. Sorry, it had 29 electoral votes. Now it has 30 electoral votes. I was saying it the other way around. But as you can see, you might be thinking, why does this matter? It's not a big deal. Just 1 or 2 electoral votes really isn't a big deal. Well, it really is a big deal because a certain party actually does get an advantage looking into 2024 due to this redistricting, due to the census which took place, due to the added number of electoral votes. Taking a look here at a good chart here, basically summarizing the electoral vote changes in 2020. So take just a general idea for you. Censuses take place every 10 years. So in 2010, we had a census, and in 2010, the census was basically like this. This was the map in 2010. Whereas in 2020, you had a census, and we saw that certain states gained or lost electoral votes. Electoral votes are based off of based on the population of a specific state. Some states gained a population. That means that they gained electoral votes. If people left the state, that means they lost electoral votes. Or if there was a net negative difference there, state would lose electoral votes. But this chart here shows you kind of a change using an equilibrium of zero to kind of give you a good idea, to kind of jog your memory there. So we see here states like Alabama, Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas. These states do not actually give us a good change with regards to the number of electoral votes. But California lost an electoral vote. Colorado gained an electoral vote. Florida gained an electoral vote. We had Illinois lost an electoral vote. We saw here Michigan lost an electoral vote. Montana gained an electoral vote. We had New York lost an electoral vote, North Carolina gained an electoral vote. Now the question is, does this help the Republicans or the Democrats? Is this going to be more an integral component of whether or not which party takes the White House? So taking a look at this, I have actually added the number of electoral votes and taken a look at this. This actually helps Republicans. So taking a look here at the map, if we were to go ahead and give the safe or likely states to the Republican Party, the Republican Party actually gained 4 electoral votes in this redistricting. If you look at safe states are states outside of Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Arizona, Georgia, and Nevada. Those are that any state that is safe, likely, or lean, basically. So any state outside of those states, Republicans gained 4 seats. They also lost 2 seats. So that's a net positive gain of 2 seats. If they gained 2 seats and they gained 4 seats and they lost 2 seats, that means that they ultimately gained 2 seats. Democrats gained 3 seats and lost 3 seats. That's a net positive of 0. Now that actually is a negative for them since the Republicans already have 2 seats. So taking a look at that, Republicans gained 2 seats. Democrats didn't really change in their numbers. Now that is looking at just the safe states. When you look at the swing states in Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, we see that there was an overall net negative of 1 seat. Michigan ended up losing a seat. Pennsylvania ended up losing a seat. And we also had North Carolina ended up gaining a seat. So it lost 2 seats in Michigan and Pennsylvania. It gained 1 seat in North Carolina. So it's a net negative of 1. Now, depending on which party wins in those particular states, that'll determine whether or not it'll be beneficial or negative towards that party. For example, if Biden were to win in North Carolina, that would be bad for the Republicans. If Trump were to win in North Carolina and Biden were to win in Pennsylvania, that would be good in terms of the number of electoral votes when compared to 2020. But overall, this is actually a net positive of 2 seats when looking at only the safe seats in 2024. Net positive of 2 seats for the Republicans. Now, that's extremely important because, especially in a close race, looking at our 2024 race, it is going to be extremely important. Because when we actually look back at the 2020 race, all the states which Trump lost by less than 1%, if we were to add up all those states, let's just go ahead and let's get a 2020 actual map here. So let's say all the states which Trump lost by less than 1%. Trump lost the state of Wisconsin by less than 1%. He lost Arizona by less than 1%. He lost Georgia by less than 1%. If he were to win those 3 states, the same 3 states which he lost by less than 1% in 2020, if he were to win those states in 2024, he would end up winning the election with 272 electoral votes or any generic Republican. That being said, when we go ahead and look at the 2020 map, if Trump were to win those exact same states in 2020, those exact same states, he would actually fall below the 200 and I believe that, yes, the 270 mark. Around, he would fall around 270, 269. But as you can see, it is extremely important in 2024 on those individual races there, determining whether or not he would win or lose in those particular states. But that's there for the election there with regards to those particular states. Now let's take a look at some polling data with regards to a Trump versus Biden, a Trump versus RFK versus Biden. So you can look here at some Trump versus Biden versus Kennedy polls. We see that Trump actually is basically tied with Joe Biden. He's ahead by 0.1%, which is basically nothing in polling. Is probably within the margin of error. But as you can see here, Trump in a Biden versus Trump versus Kennedy election prediction, we see that Trump is basically neck and neck with Joe Biden. I don't want to say that Trump's ahead. He's only ahead by 0.1%, which is not really a lot. In fact, a couple of days ago, he was actually behind. So 0.1% is obviously not a lot. That being said, as you can see, this is going to be an extremely, extremely close race in 2024. But we can see here in just a Trump versus Biden election prediction, we see that Trump does actually take some more votes. So Trump's 1.3% ahead of Joe Biden compared to when we have a Trump versus Biden versus RFK. So putting that information together, we can see that RFK takes more votes from Trump than Biden. We can see that RFK actually takes more votes away from Trump. Now, you may not actually expect that due to the fact that RFK was actually within the Democratic Party and he was registering within 10 to 15% of the Democratic Party. All that being said, RFK with his conservative positions on whether it be the vaccine or whether it be free speech or all of those issues will give him a bit of a lead with regards to Trumpers Republicans rather, who are dissatisfied with the current GOP candidate, Donald Trump. So that is where the country is headed. And the fact of the matter is that RFK takes more votes from Trump than Biden. So putting that information together, most of my videos up to this point have been a Trump versus Biden election prediction. So because of that, it is extremely, extremely integral that we actually take a look at where the polling data is for the Trump versus Biden versus RFK. Because any poll which is not taken into account RFK is a really, really bad poll. Taking a look here at some individual polls here, we see that Kennedy is taking 15%, 21%, 20%, 12, 6, 14, 22, and 9%. Those are pretty big margins. If RFK takes up to 15% of the popular vote, that is a big chunk of the popular vote, especially in key states such as Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan. Those states are going to be extremely important. So with all that information in mind there, let's take a look at the electoral map and give the electoral map to the individual candidates. Let me go ahead and set up our electoral map here. Let's go ahead and give some of the safe states. That was a pretty lengthy introduction, but I really wanted to get that introduction in because of the fact that we have to look at all the factors and put them all into account when we're giving these individual states to either candidate. Obviously, the states on the extremities will go to the Democrats, as in any election since 2008. So those are some individual states that you want to look at there. Obviously, the states in the middle of the United States will go, in the Midwest area, will go to the Republicans pretty handily there. Some likely states, Colorado and New Mexico, fairly likely, might even be safe in future elections, definitely shifting towards the left. A state like Alaska, I'm going to go ahead and put it as being likely. It voted for Trump by around 10 points in 2020. I'm going ahead and putting it as being likely. West Virginia, fairly likely for the GOP in 2024. So that individual state. Just taking a look here, I just wanted to bring up some historical relevance with regards to where the country was standing. So taking a look here, let's go ahead and take a look at an election back. I want to go to Eisenhower. So the Eisenhower map. So taking a look here at for example, this is 1948. Okay, 1948. You had the Republicans versus the Democrats. This was the map, okay, in 1948. You can see the Democrats pretty much swept right in the middle, right? Basically, they swept right in the middle. The Republicans did kind of create a kind of a column right there. So you can see the Democrats did take quite a bit. Taking a look at 1952, Republicans basically swept a majority of the states. The Democrats did win. And taking a look back at 1948, then looking at 1952, you can see that the country really changed because the fact of the matter is that the country was not as polarized in 1948 to 1952. That being said, when you look at more recent elections, going ahead and looking at, let's go ahead with 2012, we'll go to 2016. Okay, 2016. This is the 2016 map. Going ahead to 2024, only a few states changed. 2012, only a few states changed. 2008, you did have quite a bit there with regards to the majority of the states. But as you can see, I really want you to focus on a couple things. The states on the extremities, on the extreme west coast and the extreme east coasts, and the states right in the middle, okay? See how these states actually change. Notice 2012, yeah, you have a little bit of changes here and there, but generally speaking, the country did stay the same. Going to 2016, country relatively the same. You did have obviously Trump winning the Rust Belt there, which was very unusual for a Republican. All that being said, you can see that the country generally is voting the same compared to an election like 1948 to 1952, where you see a tremendous difference with regards to the number of electoral votes. Even going back to example 1976 to 1980, you could see what a big difference you could have where the country is almost complete opposite and the polarization is a lot less. That's because this country is extremely polarized, which is why it's extremely easy to make an election prediction in which, for example, if anybody were to make an election prediction, anybody, they could be left leaning, conservative, anybody. If they were to make a prediction, I guarantee you they'd get at least 40 plus states correct in an election. 40 or more states correct in an election. Why? Well, because you can easily know what states vote conservative. Kansas. There's no way Joe Biden would win Kansas. There's no way that Donald Trump's going to win California. Why? You can just generate these based on how they voted in previous elections. the previous elections compared to how they voted. And for example, especially the 20th century, you saw that the country greatly changed with regards to how it voted in elections, but you see an increased polarization. Going ahead and giving Indiana as being likely there. Indiana will be going ahead and be as being likely. Illinois, obviously the home state of former President Barack Obama, senator there for 3 years. Not the home state rather, but he was in that state for 3 years. So our next state here, obviously Hawaii. Hawaii, an extremely democratic state of Hawaii there. Going ahead and giving the state of Florida as being likely to the GOP and the state of Texas as being lean. Texas is a state which people have debated on. People say that Texas might go blue. I don't think it's going to go blue in 2024. Personally, I think the Democratic Party needs to wait until they actually see some real results coming into 2020 for with regards to especially your race there with regards to Ted Cruz obviously running for re-election. You have several factors that are going to play a key role with regards to the state of Texas. Moving on here to the state of Maine, we're going. Sorry about that. So taking a look at the state of Maine. So the state of Maine, we're going to go ahead and give two of its congressional district as being Democrat, and then one of its congressional district as being likely Republican. We're going to go ahead and giving Ohio as being lean. The reason why I'm going ahead and giving it as being lean is because of the fact that the abortion issue was up for debate in the state of Ohio, and Republicans lost badly. Marijuana, pot use was put up on the ballot in 2023. Republicans lost badly, which is why I'm going to be going ahead and giving it as being lean, not tilt. Iowa, much more conservative, going ahead and giving it as being lean. All that being said, looking back here at some previous elections, in 2012, Iowa did vote Democrats. That's an interesting phenomenon to note, as well as the state of Ohio, an electoral map which you could hardly see ever again, at least in more recent presidential elections. New Hampshire used to be a state which was competitive in 2016, but now I do not think that it's going to be as competitive. I think Biden's going to win it by a likely margin. Extremely liberal on issues such as abortion, and we're seeing how that is playing out badly for the GOP going into these races. The state of Virginia, I'm going to be going ahead and giving it as being lean, as well as the state of Montana going ahead and giving it as lean. Montana has never voted for a Democrat, I believe. I believe in I believe the last time it voted Republican was in um 1972. Yeah, the last time Minnesota has voted Republican was in 1972. So I'm going to be going ahead and giving it as being lean. That being said, Donald Trump did win in that state by 1.6%. Sorry, he lost in that state by only 1.6%, which is very little compared to previous elections. Ronald Reagan did almost flip that state in 1980, right? So 1980, he almost flipped that state. Sorry, 1984, he almost flipped that state in his Reagan landslide of 1980. All that being said, I'm going ahead and giving it as being lean, as well as the state of Virginia, hasn't voted for a Republican until I believe 2004. That was the last time it voted for a Republican. So yeah, in 2004, voted for a Republican. It used to be a Republican stronghold, although now it is much more trending towards the left. May trend a little bit more to the right, especially with Glenn Youngkin running there with regards to that state. So taking a look here at the state of Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania. I forgot to put New Hampshire as being likely there. And so one of its congressional districts, I'm going to be going ahead and giving one of its congressional districts in the state of Nebraska as being tilt. Omaha region, especially anti-Trump. So I believe that I got filled out. Yeah, I filled out majority of the states. Now we have the swing states left. Taking a look here at our margin, we have Biden at 226 electoral votes and Trump at 119 electoral votes. Now it comes down to the key critical states. If these states were to flip in any direction in 2024, you would greatly see a different outcome. If Trump wins 3 states out of this batch, he's most likely a combination of 3 states. He would win the election. If Biden were to win a certain combination of 3 states in these remaining states that I have not filled out yet, he would also win the election, which is why these particular states are going to be extremely important, and which is why we can melt it down to these 7 states. So taking a look here, let's go ahead and give the state of Nevada as being tilt for the Democrats. Republicans have not won in the state since 2004. In last time they won it was in 2004. Yeah, 2004 they won it. At that time, it only had 5 electoral votes. Although in 2008, 2012, 2016, and 2020, Democrats won in it. Although their margins have been going down, Biden won in the state by a smaller margin actually than Hillary Clinton won in the state by around 2.5% in 2020. So it is an alarm for the Democrats. All that being said, in the Senate midterm elections in 2022, Democrats actually did relatively well in that certain state. So for our next state here, we're going to be going from west to east just to make it very fair with regards to the order in which we give these particular states. For the state of Arizona, I'm going to be going ahead and giving it as being tilt, obviously with the illegal border crossings, other issues such as that, the fact that Joe Biden only won the state by an extremely small margin. I believe he won the state by, I think, 0.6 or 7, under 1%. Definitely, it was definitely below 0.9, definitely below 0.9, but he did win it by an extremely small margin. Republicans have won consistently. In fact, the last time that Republicans actually lost in this state was in, yeah, it was in 1996. So it has not been a very long time since Republicans actually lost in the state. Democrats won it by a very, very small margin. So I'm going ahead and giving it as being tilt for the Republicans there. So going ahead and giving the state of Wisconsin, since it's most towards the west. State of Wisconsin, I'm going to be going ahead and giving as being tilt. Most Republican state. Joe Biden ended up winning in the state by around a 0.6% margin. Extremely, much more conservative than most of the Rust Belt states. In fact, but it has not been voting. For example, if you go back and look at previous elections, other than 2016, in 2012, 2008, 2004, 2000, last time it voted Republican was in 1984. That just goes to show you what a big victory Trump had in 2016, winning in that particular state. But I do think that it's going to go Republican again. The fact that Biden wasn't able to consolidate that state within the Democratic area since he ran in 2020, and he only won that state by an extremely small margin when the polls had him way ahead is the reason for why I'm going ahead and giving that state to him and to President Trump in particular, due to the fact that Biden lost that state by won that state rather by an extremely small margin. I expected him to win. I would expect him to win in that, just in that state. If I was, following politics in 2020, I would have expected him to win by a pretty big margin. Looking here at the state of Michigan, for the state of Michigan, we're going to be going ahead and giving that as being tilt to the Democrats, not lean, but tilt. The reason why is because of the fact that it has been pretty liberal with regards to most of its Senate races. That being said, Michigan is pretty liberal with regards to most of its Senate races. In 2020, Biden won in the state by 2.4%, which was a pretty good margin. And the fact that it is pretty liberal compared to Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin is a reason for why I'm going to be going ahead and giving it as being tilt towards the Dems. We're taking a look here. If I were to rank the Rust Belt in terms of conservative to least conservative, the most conservative, by the way, when I reference the Rust Belt, I mean Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. If I were to rank the Rust Belt in terms of most conservative to least conservative, I would probably rank Wisconsin as being the most conservative, followed by Pennsylvania, followed by Michigan, and then followed by Minnesota, which is what kind of an overall theme that you'll be seeing throughout many of my videos with regards to how I will be putting them in order. So going ahead and looking at the state of Georgia. The state of Georgia, with its 16 electoral votes, a big prize for either candidate. Right now we have Biden at 247 electoral votes, and we have Donald Trump at 240 electoral votes. 7 electoral votes separates them apart. The current president of the United States, Joe Biden, 23 electoral votes away from the presidency, and Donald Trump, 30 electoral votes away from the presidency as well. The state of Georgia with its 16 electoral votes is going to be extremely critical. Going back to the 2016 election, Donald Trump won in the state by around a 5.2% margin against Hillary Clinton. That was actually a small margin for Republicans, considering the fact that the last time Republicans won in the state was in 1976 when you exclude the 2020 election. When you look at 2016 election, Republicans won in the state by a 5% margin, which was actually a little bit for Republicans. In 2012, Republicans won in that state by, I believe, a bigger margin than 2016. Although that being said, it shifted by around 5.5% in 2020, shifting it over to the Democrats. Joe Biden became the first president since Jimmy Carter in 1976. Jimmy Carter, obviously, that was his home state. He won that in both 1976 and 1980. It flipped in 1984, going to Ronald Reagan in his landslide, in which he won every state other than the state of Minnesota and DC. But the state of Georgia, that's just a little bit of background for you for the state of Georgia. The state of Georgia, I'm going to be going ahead and giving it as being tilt for the Republicans. I'm going to be going ahead and giving it as being tilt. That being said, you may disagree with me, and a lot of people may consider it as being tilt for the Dems. The reason why is because of the fact that it has a Democratic governor. It has very Democratic ideas with regards to the fact, sorry, not ideas, but rather the immigration from other states coming into the state of Georgia, not necessarily immigration from other countries, but immigration from other states coming into Georgia has been more liberal since the 2020 election, which may play a factor into that. Although I'm going to be going ahead and giving that state as being lean for the, tilt rather for the Republicans. North Carolina also going ahead and giving that as being tilt for the Republicans. The reason why is because of the fact that I believe that North Carolina is a state which has voted Republican since last time it voted Democrat was actually in 2008. All that being said, we shouldn't really look at how states voted in previous elections due to the fact that states flip. For example, Georgia flipped, and the last time it voted Republican was in, it did vote Republican in 1992. Sorry about that. I got that. I believe I said it last time it voted Republican besides 2020 was in 1980. It was actually 1992 it voted Democrat. But anyways, states do flip occasionally. I'm going to go ahead and giving it as being tilt. I don't believe that Joe Biden can win in a victory. Donald Trump won in the state by 1.4%. Any state which Donald Trump won in 2020 will probably vote for him again. I doubt that Joe Biden is going to get more different states than he won in 2016. I doubt that. His popularity has not been very high since the 2020 election. He has approval rating right now on Real Clear Politics. I could pull it up for you, but I believe I remember it. His latest popularity was, I believe, 39.2%. Some polls have him at like 38%. He's not doing very good in the polls, and he has a lot of questions over mental fitness. Other issues, voters are not. In fact, 77% of Americans as a whole, again, this is an overlap of Democrats, think that Joe Biden will not even live through a second term. Okay. I'm not saying that I believe that, but I'm just saying that that's what the polls say. Okay. Yeah, I think that he could live through a second term. I mean, I'm pretty sure he could live through a second term. I think that his mental fitness really gets on people. All that being said, I think he could live through a second term if he gets reelected. A lot of Americans don't think that though. Okay, but I think he would. I think he would live through a second term if he were to get reelected. I'm not saying that doesn't mean I'm for or against Joe Biden. I'm just saying that in terms of I think that he could get through a second term. It might be difficult, but I think he could get through a second term. But that's not the purpose of today's video. Today's video is to look at the 2020 election. In the state of Pennsylvania, I'm going ahead and giving the state of Pennsylvania to Joe Biden. Joe Biden will win in the state of Pennsylvania. A lot of people consider Pennsylvania as being Joe Biden's home state. I'm not going to be considering it as being Joe Biden's home state. The reason why is because of the fact that he only lived in that state for a while, then he immediately went to Delaware once he began politics. And Delaware isn't really a swing state, which is kind of bad for Joe Biden. If Joe Biden were to be senator, for example, in a state such as Georgia or in a state such as Pennsylvania, that would be a really benefit to him. Although Joe Biden was a senator in a state which was so liberal, okay, which is so liberal. So that's not really going to help him. If he wins in Delaware by 90%, and if he wins in Delaware by 51%, assuming Trump wins 49% of the vote, it doesn't really matter, right? So if he were to be in a state like, for example, Pennsylvania or a state like Arizona, that would be much better for him. That being said, I'm going to go ahead and giving it to him. RFK is going to be definitely a big factor in 2024. I do think that he's going to take a lot of votes away from Joe Biden. He's going to take a lot of votes away from Joe Biden. That being said, this is my prediction. Joe Biden at 266 electoral votes. We have President Trump at 272, guys. President Biden there 266. Joe Biden 272. Extremely close race. Where all the states which Donald Trump lost by under 1% have gone to him again. Again, guys, that was not pre-planned in today's video, but we were able to give those states to Donald Trump. We were able to give Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Nevada to Joe Biden. We looked at the polls, we looked at the trends. Again, guys, if you like this video, please hit that subscribe button down below. Only 2.2% of those of you in the last 28 days have subscribed to this channel. So do me a quick favor and hit that subscribe button. We're on track to get to 100 subscribers pretty soon. So do me a quick favor and hit that subscribe button down below. We'll be having another election prediction. There's obviously a poll within my community page. In my community page, there is a poll for the next video which you guys want me to post. Go head over to that community poll. It'll be right there. And I'll see you in the next video.